Today, in my series on creative inspiration, I'd like to talk about Huntington Witherill, a photographer whose work has truly inspired me and who I hope you might find some inspiration in as well. And if topics like this are of interest to you, I'd really appreciate your support by having you click on that subscribe button below. So, let's get started. I'm going to be taking you on a short tour of Huntington Witherill's work, but first I'd just like to mention how I personally discovered his work and what had appealed to me. I first became familiar with his work through his high-key imagery, most elegantly shown in his book Orchestrating Icons, which I was lucky enough to get a copy of before it went out of print. But there's really three things about his work and about him that has inspired me. The first is that I had never seen landscape images done in high key the way that he had. And it made me realize that you can really experiment and try to look within yourself to find different ways of expressing what you might be seeing in front of you, and that was okay to be different. The second is that he took personal adversity and made it work for him and integrated it and made it become a positive in his creative process. What am I referring to? Well, he's had some very poor eyesight, and he took this and made it work for him. This is from a Lenswork interview. I'm going to read for you so I don't get it wrong, and I'm going to put a link in the description below of the entire interview for you. But let me just read this one part that talks about his eyesight. He says that from birth, I've had very poor eyesight. I'm very nearsighted, but I've turned this into an advantage. It's helpful for me to be able to look at things as big blobs of shape without a lot of detail in them. It helps distill planes of focus and different shapes of positive and negative space so that I can more easily arrange them within the frame. It's a process of distillation that happens physically for me because of my eyesight. I often don't see all the details that other people do. And yet, he's been able to use that as part of his creative process and make extremely compelling work. And the third thing is that technology has changed over the years, and he's truly embraced that and integrated it into his own work, probably best seen in his more recent portfolios, such as photosynthesis and enigmata. So, let's go take a short tour of his work. So here's Huntington Witherill's website. I'll put a link to that down in the description. And let's go to the galleries. And what I'd like to do is share a few images from the galleries that I've really particularly enjoyed. Let's go ahead and start with the Orchestrating Icons gallery. That's the one that contains a good deal of his high key work. And that's really how I had first discovered his photography. In the Lenswork interview, he talked about some of the work in Orchestrating Icons, and it really serves as a very nice introduction to this gallery. He said, "I took a high-key photograph, no doubt by mistake, and looked at it and thought it was an interesting idea. I decided to experiment and see where I could take it. I'm a firm believer in never getting too comfortable with what you're doing." Let's have a look. Cracked mud and stone. I find this photo so engrossing on a number of levels. First, it looks like a straight photograph, but then it feels like the dried mud lines could have been drawn in by hand, and yet they weren't. And then the large crack in the middle of the dried mud gives it a three-dimensional feel on top of what would otherwise look like a very two-dimensional photo. I love it. Now I'd like to show you two of his dune photos. This one's called Dune Form Death Valley and was on the cover of his Orchestrating Icon book I showed you earlier. I think this is really the epitome of his high key work, where the photo, at least to me, becomes more about shape, form, and tone as opposed to a specific real subject. Dune form number 3, Death Valley, continues in this vein. Let's go ahead now and take a look at his Botanical Dances portfolio. So here we are in the Botanical Dances gallery, and these were made in the mid-80s to mid-90s after the orchestrating icon images. And I find it interesting that he's now tried something new. He's photographing pressed flowers and botanical specimens against painted backgrounds. To me, this looks like the analog precursor of something that I really enjoy doing in Photoshop, which is applying textures to an image. Here we have the photograph entitled Asplenium lucidum, and I really enjoy the very graphic and contrasty look, and really almost a three-dimensional look at the bottom to this photo. In this photo called Cosmos, the flowers almost have a very translucent feel against the painted background. And in this photo called Leaf, I believe we're seeing his high key work translated into this botanical portfolio. Let's go have a look at the Chariots of Desire gallery. The Chariots of Desire gallery is a gallery of classic cars, and I really love how he's taken the car details and transformed them into really a two-dimensional graphic image that shows all the contrast and lines. And if you've ever tried doing this sort of photography yourself, you know how hard this can be in terms of dealing with the reflections. This one is called Grill Detail 1937 Cord. I love the way the reflections are integrated into the image. This one, again, sort of looking a bit high key, is called Grill Detail 1933 Marmon. And finally, this becomes almost a study in shape and is called Flames Custom Hot Rod number 3. In the introduction to this video, I mentioned that as technology progressed, Witherill integrated it into his more current work. That's nowhere more evident than in the last two portfolios I'd like to share with you, called Photosynthesis and Enigmata. In Photosynthesis, as we see here, the flowers against painted backgrounds from Botanical Dances have now moved into the realm of beautiful, even sensual digital manipulations, such as in this photograph called Iris number 20, in Orchid number 16, and in Lilies number 90. Finally, in the Enigmata portfolio, Witherill combines photography with digital drawings and sketchings, as well as digital manipulation to make abstract digital collages. We can take a look at a few of my favorites here. When one compares these recent portfolios to his older ones, it's very clear that as an artist he has embraced many, many changes throughout the years. If you're intrigued by Witherill's work, why not take a few minutes to explore his website on your own? It not only has some wonderful photographs, but his eMusings newsletter has a plethora of excellent photographic essays as well. One thing that I'd like to mention is that he makes his work very accessible to those that might like to own a print of his through his introductory print specials. That's how I was able to purchase this print of his, which I really enjoy. The idea of owning a print by someone who inspires you is really very meaningful. Well, I hope you enjoyed his work as much as I do and are inspired by him as much as I am. If you'd like to see more videos on this sort of topic, I'd appreciate your support by having you click on that subscribe button below. I'm Howard, and we'll see you next time.